Welcome back. It looks like once again they've got the witness on the stand before they bring in the jury, which doesn't seem to be the normal way of doing it. But hey, we're here for it. She looks like she'd rather be just about anywhere else than there on the stand. Where are our prosecutors? Here we go. Is that what? I think the water is new. It's hers. Okay.
Do you swear firm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. All right. Have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
Ma'am, go ahead and state your full name for the record.
My name is Sherilyn Schaefer.
Ms. Schaefer, how are you currently employed?
I am employed as an EMT in the film industry, a medic.
Can you just explain to the jury the situation, the connection between movie sets and medics? Is a medic always on a movie set, and if so, why?
Usually, if it's a union show, a medic is always on set for the potential that there could be something dangerous that happens. But 99% of the time, we are in charge of making sure the actors, and not necessarily the actors, but the crew have sunscreen, bug spray, Advil, electrolytes. If it's hot out, we make sure everyone stays hydrated. If it's cold, we hand out hot hands. That's majority of it. If somebody gets a splinter or a cut, we take care of those as well. If somebody gets injured enough that they need to go to get stitches or be seen, we bandage them up, we send them off. And then we are in charge of the paperwork that goes with the production to make sure that the injury can be to go through workers' comp, so that it's not coming out of the crew or whoever's insurance.
Okay. How long have you worked generally in the film industry?
I started in the film industry in 2008, or I'm sorry, 2009.
Okay. And how long have you worked as a medic in the film industry?
Since 2014.
And can you summarize for the jury what your medical training consisted of that allowed you to be qualified for this position?
I'm a licensed EMT.
All right. Ms. Schaefer, approximately since 2009, if you can guesstimate for us approximately how many films have you worked on?
Film and TV.
Sure.
40 plus.
Okay, and of those, can you guesstimate for us again approximately how many had real firearms and an armor on set?
Maybe 10, 12.
Was the handling of firearms by the armor on the set of Rust different than what you were used to?
Yes.
Can you describe to the jury what you noticed, how you thought it was different?
I noticed the armorer on Rust did not secure the weapons as a normal armorer would, or an armorer on productions I've worked on before would. Normally, the weapon would be secured until it was time for the actor or stunt actor to need it. And then the armorer would go to their generally a locked cabinet, grab the weapon, take it to the actor or stunt actor. With the first AD, sometimes the stunt coordinator, depending on who's there, open the weapon, empty it. If it needs to be emptied, show the actor or stunt actor the type of bullet, I guess you would call it, that's going to be in the gun. Show it that it's not real, and then, or essentially check it in front of the actor and the first AD to make sure that everyone's comfortable with it. And then hand it over to that performer for the shot, for whatever shot they are shooting.
And just to be clear, what you just described was what you are accustomed to.
That is correct.
Can you explain to the jury how that procedure worked on the set of Rust?
A lot of times when I would notice our armorer hand the guns over to the actors, sometimes checking them, sometimes not. Generally, once the scene is over, you would remove the weapon. The armorer would remove the weapon from the actor and resecure it until it is needed again. On Rust, that did not happen a good majority of the time. The actor still remained in possession of the weapon, whether it was in their holster or in their hands.
And can you kind of explain to the jurors how long the actors would be left with the weapons in their possession after the scene, and maybe discuss a little bit about how long it takes to do a turnaround?
Okay, there were a few times where they would have the weapon for a minute or two or so after we had cut, but then there'd be other times where we would be turning around, and that's where the camera position changes. Like if we're looking at somebody and we turn around, then we're going to look the other direction at the actor. That can take, depending on all the moving parts, 20, 30 minutes, where they would still be in possession of the weapon.
And I just want to be clear, did you testify that you saw Ms. Gutierrez provide actors with weapons without conducting a safety check?
That is correct.
Did you ever have an occasion to notice whether or not any of the actors on the set of the movie did their own safety checks?
There were some times that the actors would open their weapons and look, see either while it was being reloaded or not, opening it up and looking at it. And generally on a film set, you would not do that without the armorer present in front of you. And if you did, then the armorer would need to be called back to recheck that weapon in front of you.
So when the actors would do their own safety checks, was Ms. Gutierrez participating in that?
Sometimes she was near, sometimes she wasn't. I don't recall exactly all the time. I didn't notice a lot, but there were some times where she could have been close by or not, but she was not directly in front of the actor.
Okay.
And it wasn't every actor. It was, just a couple here and there.
Okay. Did you ever take note of how Ms. Gutierrez would load ammunition into her fanny pack?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Schaefer, do you recall the question?
Could you repeat it again, please?
Did you ever take note of how Ms. Gutierrez would transfer ammunition from boxes to her fanny pack?
Yes, there was one occasion that I did see that.
Can you describe what you saw for the jury?
So there would be the boxes that had this styrofoam with the ammunition inside of it. And there were times I would see her take, or this one time, I saw her take the box and kind of tip it a little bit and use her fingers to put some in, and then hand it back, I believe, to Ms. Zachary, and get another box and do the same thing, put more in, put it back, get another box, put more in, put it back. So we're mixing multiple rounds inside of different, and again, I don't know what they were, but mixing different rounds for different weapons. There were some short ones, some long ones.
So during this instance where you saw Ms. Gutierrez load the fanny pack directly from the boxes, if you recall, would she take the time to check every round to make sure that it was inert?
No.
All right. In your experience in the film industry, does the armor always stay with the firearm?
Yes. Or within proximity, be able to visually see. You mean when the actor has the weapon?
Correct.
Yeah, to be able to visually see.
Was that the case on the set of Rust?
No, not always.
I'm going to shift gears and direct your attention to October 21st of 2021. If you can just kind of walk the jury through how that day went and what you recall. You can start before the lunch hour and then we'll kind of move through it, okay?
Okay. About 6:30 was my call time that morning, and that's what time that I needed to be on set. I arrived on set. I arrived to base camp first, grabbed breakfast. I don't remember if we had a COVID test that day or not, but then I went up to set. And I have a trauma bag that I take with me, and I have a box and a stand that has, inside the box will have the emergency, it will have tissue, it'll have cough drops, it'll have those sorts of things that a crew member might want, as well as containers of sunscreen and bug spray, because at that time we had the sun and bugs. So I went and I set my stuff down at the middle of the town, and on the radio there was a little bit of noise about the camera department being behind schedule, and I had asked somebody, I'm not sure who, one of our either one of our other ADs or one of our PAs on set, production assistants on set. I'd asked what was going on, and they had said that the camera department was not ready to go, and wouldn't be ready to go on time. I generally am friends with the majority of everybody on set. I've worked with everybody a lot, and so I went over to where the camera truck was to kind of see if I could see what was going on or talk to anybody about what was going on, because I knew that they had some issues with the production. And I noticed that they were packing up all their equipment. So I watched them do that for a little while, but then I had to go back to setting everything else up that I had to set up. And at some point in time, our first AD, Dave Halls, had called for a safety meeting that morning, which was rare. And it was more of a meeting to kind of get the crew back together again, because we were all kind of spread out and try to figure out what was going on that morning. And so he in the safety meeting, he just said that we were going to have
I'm assuming, okay, sorry.
I can say what it is.
Ms. Schaefer, without saying what anyone said, can you summarize for the jury what your understanding was of the purpose for that meeting?
The purpose of that meeting was to get the crew back together as we were scattered, to try to get the day started. We were already so far behind with the camera crew leaving.
And when scenes are being filmed on the set, are you present every time a scene is being filmed?
95% of the time, unless
Okay.
I need to use the restroom or something.
Okay. Were scenes being filmed that morning before lunch?
Yes,
And were you present for those?
yes.
Do you recall if any of those scenes involved the use of firearms?
I'm not sure about the first scene. I don't remember what we shot. The second part was before lunch, right after we moved up to the church. We had a scene. I'd like to say that it used weapons. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Did you, during that scene, did you see any of the handoff of the weapon from the armorer to the actor?
I did not.
Okay. And then at some point, do you go to lunch?
Yes.
And when lunch is over, tell us what happens.
After lunch, I had gotten a ride up to set from our base camp, which was just a few minutes away down the road. And I had walked from where they drop us off up to where the church is, and was waiting for the rest of the crew and the rest of the departments to get to set as well. And so I sat down on the end of a tailgate that was nearby. I believe it was electric truck, but I'm not positive.
Okay. Tell us what happened after that.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
I was talking to whoever was sitting next to me, maybe a locations person, I don't remember. And the sound of a gun went off, or I heard the sound of a gun. And I looked over at who was sitting next to me and I said, are we rehearsing? Because I didn't know that we were back in at that point. I hadn't heard anything on the radio about us being back in and from lunch. And I said, I didn't hear anybody call, fire in the hole, or normally like you would hear, the armorer would say quarter load, half load, full load, whatever type of ammunition that they are shooting. And none of that was said. So as soon as I said that, I grabbed the bag, my normal bag, and I ran towards the church. I wasn't very far from it. And as I was approaching the door, I heard medic emergency come over the radio.
And are you the only medic on set?
I am.
Okay. So when you heard medic emergency on the radio, did that information tell you where to go?
No.
How did you know where to go?
I was there. I was sitting there outside the church waiting.
Okay, understood. Please proceed.
So I got to the door, and one of the things that we are taught when you're becoming an EMT is your scene needs to be safe before you go into it. So I stood at the door and I looked around to see what was happening, and I asked what happened, and somebody said, Halyna was shot, or the gun went off, something to that effect. And I looked down at Halyna, who had been sitting at that point to my right, and Joel was on the left in obvious pain. And Alec Baldwin was at the back of the church from me, the opposite end of the church from me. And then I looked down at Halyna again, and as I started going towards her, I believe it was our camera operator, Reed, had asked her if she could feel her legs. And for one, I believe she said yes. For the other one, she said no. And so I knew that there was some sort of spinal injury at that point. And as I was going towards her, I could see the blood dripping from her back onto the church floor.
Was she still seated at this point, or was she?
She was leaning kind of on a pew.
Okay.
in my smaller bag, I carry trauma shears, and so I started cutting up the back of her jacket to try to find where she was bleeding from. And at some point in time, I believe it was Ann Shim, our second AD, asked me if there's anything that I needed or she could do for me. And before that, I'm sorry, I called out on the radio for somebody to call 911. We would need an ambulance. And Ann then asked me if I needed anything, and I asked her to get me my bigger trauma bag, because that's where I keep my trauma-related items. And she did, and I asked her to also call Matt Hemmer, who's one of our electricians. I asked her to call him because he had some previous military experience medically, and he was one of the people I knew I could get up there to help me. Being the only medic and 2 patients is not easy. And so I had him just take over for Joel while I tended to Halyna.
And so if you can kind of explain to us what kind of treatment you attempted with regard to Ms. Hutchins.
When I cut up the front of her, or the back of her jacket, I'm sorry, I grabbed some gauze and I put it on the one hole that I could find at that point. And I asked, at that point, I believe it was Reed was next to me. I gave him a glove and I asked him to hold that gauze there. And sometime in the meantime, we had moved the pews, or the guys had moved the pews away and laid her down. And I went to the front of her to cut up the front of her shirt, to the chest area, to try to find the other hole, knowing that Joel had been shot. I knew that it was a through and through, or in one side out the other.
You already suspected that it was a through and through?
Yes, because
Okay.
Joel, because of the way that Joel was screaming in pain, I knew he had likely, whatever had gone through her had gone into him as well.
Okay, please proceed.
So I cut up the front and I could not find an entrance wound, and so I had to keep looking until I found the other wound. I didn't know what was entrance and what was exit at that point. And when I did, I grabbed another gauze that I have, and I put it there to apply pressure. And I'm not sure at what point. I think I asked Serge or somebody who was somebody else who was nearby to hold that and apply pressure while I went and grabbed oxygen.
Okay, and so give us just a little bit of information about your oxygen apparatus and what you did with that.
It's in my main bag, so I grabbed my main bag and pulled it over, and it's a non-rebreather, so it's the mask that goes over the face, and it has a bag at the bottom that inflates, and so the oxygen is delivered that way through the mask. It's got the things go around the back of the head, hold the mask on.
Okay, and just to be clear, we heard some testimony earlier in the trial about Ms. Hutchins being intubated. Did you have anything to do with that process?
I did not.
Okay. Go ahead and proceed.
So I put oxygen on her, and I called back to the ambulance. On the radio. I'm sorry. I called back on the radio to make sure to have somebody call back, or whoever was communicating with 911, that we would need 2 ambulances and a bird at that point, because I knew Joel would need an ambulance and she was going to need a helicopter.
You already knew she was going to need a helicopter.
With that kind of trauma, yes. We are 15, 18 minutes from the hospital, from town. And with the way that she was bleeding, I knew she was going to need more than we could provide, or an ambulance could provide, or Santa Fe hospitals could provide. She needed to go to the trauma center in Albuquerque.
Okay. And do you have any knowledge about the condition that a patient has to be in order for the helicopter to take off?
They need to be stabilized.
And do you know why that is, given your medical training?
I do not.
Okay, fair enough. After you called for 2 ambulances and a helicopter, what did you do at that point in time?
I just continued. Halyna was fighting. She didn't want the oxygen on her face. She didn't want anybody holding anything on her. She She was fighting. And
And-
Serge was there too.
Were you, after, we understand that you were providing oxygen and that Ms. Hutchins was struggling with that. Was there anything else that happened other than that before paramedics arrived and took over that you can recall?
There was a point in time when I first had walked in, there were still people inside, and so I had said to whoever was there, AD wise, to remove anybody that was in the church that didn't need to be there. If they weren't some of the people that I had asked to help, then they needed to be removed. Alec being one of them. He was still in the church shortly after I got in there. Sorry, I'm bouncing backwards a little.
No, it's okay. So you asked an assistant director to do that for you?
I believe either assistant director or PA, somebody.
And a PA is a production assistant?
Production assistant, which is when you're first trying to get in the union as a in their union as an AD, you have to become a PA first, and you have to have so many days of PA work that you submit to the union before you can start as the next. I believe it's the second is the.
Okay, all right, understood. So whoever it was that you spoke to and you asked them to remove Mr. Baldwin and any other unnecessary people, did that person do that for you?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, did paramedics arrive?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how long it took them to get there?
It felt like forever. I believe though it was. I don't have an exact time. I believe 12, 15 minutes.
Okay. And
I do believe that there was a, before the ambulance arrived, there might have been somebody else, a police officer, maybe that was around, but ambulance-wise, it was quite some time.
okay, and do you recall a police officer coming in with a medical bag and handing items to you?
I do, vaguely, but I do.
Okay. In your medical training, are you aware of the procedure that's done when a person is intubated, even though you didn't participate in that in this case?
Yes.
And are you aware that sometimes objection? Okay, Ms. Schaefer, I'm not gonna finish that question. Thank you very much. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-exam.
Hello, Ms. Schaefer.
Hello.
I want to start with this incident you talked about on direct with the ammunition and Ms. Gutierrez putting it into her fanny pack, okay?
Okay.
So first, you don't know the difference between blanks and dummies, right?
I do not visually.
Right, and is what you saw in that one instance, Sarah Zachary bringing Hannah Gutierrez the different boxes of ammunition?
She was next to Hannah. I'm not sure exactly where the boxes were staged.
Right, but you saw Sarah bring her a box, and then Ms. Gutierrez take the rounds and put them in her fanny pack, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't know if Sarah had shaken those boxes before she brought, or those rounds before she brought them, right?
I do not.
Can metal prop guns that can't fire, like replicas, like gun replicas, would those require safety checks? Okay, Ms. Schaefer, you said you worked on several film sets before, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've given us testimony today about what you saw and safety checks and whatnot, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what a replica gun is?
Can you? I can tell you. I would not know if somebody showed me put a plastic gun near me or one that could fire. So whichever way you were referring to replica, I do not know. Because I would consider that a prop gun versus something the armorer would be in charge of.
So you are not, did you just say you don't know the difference between a replica gun and a real gun?
If I were not to see them, touch them in front of me, no, I would not.
Are you aware whether a replica gun even requires safety checks?
I'm confused by your words. Do you mean if you mean a rubber gun, that does not need safety checks. You would not check a rubber gun. But if it is a gun that you put ammunition of any kind in, whether it's dummy or, whatever other the quarter loads that they use, then those would need to be checked for safety. But a rubber gun would not.
And you're saying that despite never working as an armor before, right?
That is correct. I am not an armorer.
And you've never even worked in props as a props assistant, have you?
I have not worked in props. That is not my craft.
And have you ever worked on a set where there was actually a part-time armor?
Part-time? No. Day players? Yes, but not part-time.
So who is in charge of the gun cart when the armor has to go to the restroom?
That would, I've never been in that situation. If somebody needed, if the armorer was in the restroom, I would assume we would wait until the armorer was available to do their job. That would not be somebody for any other department that I am aware of.
When you saw this incident with Sarah Zachary bringing Hannah this ammunition, and you saw Hannah, you said put it in a fanny pack, right?
Correct.
You don't know if those were blanks or dummies, do you?
I do not.
And you were you aware that Ms. Gutierrez's fanny pack had multiple separators in it?
I was not. I did not. I just saw her pouring them in. I did not see anything other than the pouring motion.
And you don't follow Ms. Gutierrez or Sarah Zachary all day on set, do you?
I do not.
And you don't know if there are safety checks done that were out of your presence, do you?
I do not.
Is it true that you have filed a lawsuit against David Hall's PDQ, Seth Kinney, and Sarah Zachary, and Hannah Gutierrez,
Yes, it is true.
among others, right?
Correct.
And in that lawsuit, you claim that you've been traumatized by the incident, right?
Absolutely.
And you are actually seeking money damages in that lawsuit for extreme emotional distress.
That is correct.
Did you in fact obtain a civil judgment against Sarah Zachary in that lawsuit for a sum of money?
It has been entered into judgment, yes.
And your case against Ms. Gutierrez, that's still pending, right?
That is correct.
Do you believe that your testimony here today is going to help you in your civil case against her?
I'm not here for my civil case. I'm here for this case.
I understand what you're here for, ma'am, but do you believe that your testimony here is going to help you in that case?
I'm not thinking about that case. I'm thinking about the fact that had our armorer or our first AD done their jobs, we would not be here. A woman would not be dead. A mother would not be gone.
And you filed a civil lawsuit over this
Yes,
for your damages
correct.
to get money.
And not for money. It's not how it started.
And you, ma'am, are an EMT basic or an EMT? What is your EMT training?
EMT. There is an EMT, there's
Now made from Daya Oat Cream Blend.
We need to approach.
What is your experience? You did say you worked at the hospital, but what is your experience with treating gunshot wounds?
I do not have experience with gunshot wounds. They were not on the floor I worked on.
Why wouldn't you be trained on that type of injury when you're dealing on a set with real guns?
I am trained for it. You asked about my experience at the hospital.
Okay, so you are trained with treating gunshot wounds,
Correct.
but you just don't have experience actually applying that training. Is that fair?
Not in the hospital setting or outside of it, correct?
You said on direct that you had 2 trauma bags.
I have my normal bag, which has, it's a 96% bag. It's kind of like a walking Walgreens, but it has gauze in it and trauma shoes in case something else is needed until I get my main trauma bag.
Did you have any equipment with you on that day specifically addressed to treating a gunshot wound?
No,
You didn't have chest seals?
no.
Did you have any IVs?
I am not licensed to start IVs. So I would not. And we are on a movie set where there should be no gunshot wounds.
Well, are there other things on a movie set that could cause a thoracic puncture on the set?
Not generally. Not generally. If there is going to be something that's going to happen where something more traumatic like that could happen, then we would request a standby ambulance to be on set with us so that we had all the gear and equipment needed, as well as additional medics to help.
But this movie had knives involved in it, right?
I could not tell you.
And horses,
There were horses.
snakes.
There were wild snakes. We did not bring them onto set.
Can we approach?
Do you know who intubated Miss Hutchins?
I do not. I can assume, but I do not.
You said you can assume. Well, I mean, did you see it happen?
I did not.
Okay. Prior to all of these concerns that you're telling us about here today with Ms. Guttierez, did you never raise any of those concerns with anyone?
I did not.
Not even the safety director, David Halls?
I did not.
And you said on direct, I believe, that prior to the shot that you heard on that day, that I think I heard you say, I want to get it clear, that you did not hear Dave Halls yell out, rehearsals up, first team on set. Did you ever hear that?
I did not.
You never heard any call out that they were going to do that set?
No, not on the radio. I did not hear it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen and I didn't hear it, but
No, I just want to know what you heard.
I
You
did not
didn't
hear that, no.
Okay. No further questions.
Redirect.
Ms. Schaefer, are chest seals and IVs customary for movie set medics?
Chest seals, if you can get them, it's not like we can go to a hospital and pick up equipment that, or products that we would keep in our bags. Whatever we generally keep in our bags is something that we buy over the counter. There are ways to make chest seals, but they're not the most, they sometimes hurt more than help. IVs would be something that needs to be ordered, and if you do not have medical direction or a doctor that works at an ER that says, yes, you can work to your scope of practice or your license level, if you don't have that, which most medics in New Mexico don't have, most medics don't have that medical direction, you are not allowed to do that outside of a hospital setting or outside of if you were employed by a EMS.
Okay. And shifting gears, you were asked on cross-examination some questions about whether or not safety checks of ammunition would have taken place outside your presence. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
In your experience, are the safety checks of the ammunition done in the presence of the crew and the cast?
Yes.
Do you know if there's a reason for that?
I'm not sure.
Well, if a safety check of ammunition was done outside the presence of the cast and crew, would the cast and crew have knowledge as to the level of safety associated with that ammunition?
Not if it was not done in front of them, no. But the cast and crew are all welcome to ask for it to happen.
Okay. You were asked some questions about a civil lawsuit, and you were asked if you were testifying today because you thought it would help your civil lawsuit.
Correct.
And I think your response was, you didn't do it for money, that's not how it started. So I'd like you to, and then I think you got cut off. I'd like you to go ahead and finish that.
The reason that I brought any kind of lawsuit to anybody in the beginnings is because I wanted change in our industry. I did not want something like this to be able to happen again to anybody else, to their families, to the crew that knows them as family. I wanted some sort of change to happen, some policy change, whether it be required to have a standby ambulance or it be required to have additional medics if there's going to be big stunts or big gunfire or anything that could potentially cause, somebody to become injured. I wanted that change in our industry because on that show, there were roughly 75 crew. That is minimal to compared to what I normally would have on set. I would have no less than 300 usually before I would be approved to have an additional medic to come and help me. That is just not okay. That is not okay. And being the only medic there with 2 patients, knowing my resources were not close enough to help in any significant way is what I wanted to change.
And have you suffered from extreme trauma as a result of this?
Yes. Can I just expand?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's proceed. Upon my questioning, you asked if I asked you about your claim for emotional distress, and you responded and asked if you could expand on that. The court is going to let you. Please expand.
Thank you. I went home that night and I looked at my little boy, who's the same age as Halyna's son. And all I could think about is how I could not save his mother's life and how he was going to grow up without a mother. And how her spouse lost the love of his life.
Okay. I
Understood.
did not expect this testimony. I did not expect this testimony. So you're going to, and I mean no harm to you, but we're going to strike that testimony, okay? So disregard that testimony, okay? All right, let's.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Wait, no.
Please. Back. Mr. Bull. Oh, I'm sorry.
The emotional expense, her narrative, where she said, can I expand on that? And then she continued on and on and on. That's what you're going to strike, okay? You're going to disregard that as evidence. The rest of it, her direct, her cross-examination, and then her redirect, except when she said, can I expand on that? And then went into, her personal trauma, okay? Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for the next witness, Shirley?
Yes, I am.
State calls Mamie Mitchell.
Counsel? Counsel approach. Counsel approach.
Okay. Raise your right hand, ma'am.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Speak into the microphone, thank you.
Give me just 1 second to get my notes in order. Ma'am, will you state your full name for the record?
Mamie Elizabeth Mitchell.
And Ms. Mitchell, what do you do for a living?
I'm a substitute teacher.
How long have you been a substitute teacher?
I think around 2.5 weeks.
So prior to being a substitute teacher, what did you do for a living?
I was a Hollywood script supervisor.
And can you explain to the jury what a script supervisor does?
Sometimes I pre-time the script.
We don't know what that means. We don't know what
I read the script, and in my mind, I give a producer and director an idea of how long their movie is. And based on that, they'll cut some scenes or add some scenes, build some sets or not build the sets. So it's a budgetary thing. While we're shooting a film, I provide the actors with lines if they need them. I keep the continuity in all areas.
And when you say you keep the continuity, can you explain to us what that means?
It means that your right hand is on your right hip and you're leaning on your left hand. And I'm going to make sure you do that every time we shoot.
That
Move the
scene.
camera. That scene for that dialogue. So it's maintaining the continuity, which brings me to the thing that I really do is to ensure that a film cuts together seamlessly in the editing room, which gives the director choices.
As a part of being a script supervisor, do you keep very close track of all of the filming that's done on the set and the scenes that have been filmed?
Yes, I log every shot, lens, how long the shot is, if it's incomplete, if it's good, if it's not good, if it's fair, if it's the best one. And if there's an airplane on line 6, but then the airplane, it's okay in line 9, sound, everything that has to do with photography, I have in here, and that's translated to the editing room.
Okay. How long were you a script supervisor before you decided to become a substitute teacher?
About 42 years.
And in those years that you have worked in the film industry, how many movies and TV shows do you think you've worked on?
74.
And of those 74 shows, if you can guesstimate for us, how many of those had live guns and an armorer?
I think I've worked with an armorer about 24 times on 24 films. Sometimes,
Yeah, go ahead.
sometimes maybe a gun is used one time. And if the armor was brought in for that, I'm not really aware of that. But when guns are really a part of a script, about 24 times.
Okay. Safe to say you have a lot of experience with armorers on movie sets.
I do.
As the script supervisor, are you present for every single take that is filmed for every single scene?
Unless it's a second unit, and I have a second unit script supervisor, but for every first unit shot, I'm there for every take.
On the set of Rust, were you there for every take?
Yes.
Okay. So I am going to ask you if you noticed any differences between Ms. Gutierrez and the other armorers that you worked with on the previous 24 occasions.
No objection.
I found her to be inexperienced and did not present in the way that I'm used to seeing professional armorers, union armorers on a film set. It was different.
Did you find her behavior on the film set to be professional?
I did not.
Did you ever take notice of where firearms were stored during filming or around the set?
I saw them on her cart.
And when you saw them on her cart, was she present?
Not all the time.
And was that unusual?
Everything about the cart was unusual.
When you say everything about the cart was unusual, can you explain to the jury what you mean?
In my experience, what I have experienced on film sets is that the armors are very quiet, focused, and very organized. Everything is very organized. And they're very focused. I don't know if I said that, but they're very focused and sort of methodical about everything. Their movements are very methodical.
I'm going to take you back to your concerns about the cart specifically. Can you explain what your concerns were with the state of the prop cart?
Well, I just never seen anything like it. It just reminded me, I mean, not that it reminded me, but the best way I can describe it is it was like that drawer in your kitchen where you just put stuff that doesn't really go anywhere else, the random things, and you go in to look for something, and just, it was messy to me. It looked different than what I was used to.
Did it seem organized?
No, it did not seem organized.
At any point in time, were you aware that there were what I'm going to refer to as accidental discharges that took place on set?
I was on the set at the cabin.
Hang on, you're a step ahead of me. Were you aware of the accidental discharges?
Yes,
Okay. Were you present for the accidental discharges?
yes.
Okay, can you go ahead and explain to us what happened with regard to those accidental discharges?
Well, I believe the first one, I was walking. Shall I describe the set? I was from here to where those people are back there away, walking back. We had camped out over here for a wide shot. And so we kind of moved back. And as I was walking back, there was a gunshot went off. There was a gunshot, and it was frightening.
And do you know the circumstances of that accidental discharge?
Well, it was one of them that I know about now.
No, that's okay. In terms of when you heard the gunshot go off, why was it frightening? It's a Western. You know, we've heard that there's lots of guns and blanks and.
Because it doesn't happen.
What doesn't happen?
Guns do not just go off on a film set.
In your career, do you recall having that ever happen to you?
I do not.
And when, can you give the jury a little bit of background on, given that guns go off on movie sets because there's blank ammunition in the gun and guns are being shot, why would it have startled you? What's the procedure usually for gunshots?
Fire in the hole. Someone yells, fire in the hole.
What does that tell you when someone yells that? To tell us what you're doing.
Fingers in your ears, mouth open. You have to keep the mouth open.
Why do you keep your mouth open?
It helps your eardrums. Something about that. That's what we do. I've known that forever. You keep your mouth open and you go like this.
Okay. So
You protect your hearing.
with regard to the accidental discharges, did anyone call fire in the hole?
No,
And how many accidental discharges occurred while you were working on set?
2.
And do you recall if they were the same day?
They were the same day, same set.
Did they cause you to feel concerned?
I was concerned and I was confused.
What do you mean confused?
Shortly after I was hired by Roe Waters to do this movie.
No, I'm sorry. I think I understand, and I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
So let me, and let's, let me take you to, I'm sorry, let me back up.
Okay.
Ma'am, you indicated that you are on the set of Rust, you were present for the filming of every take of every scene, is that right?
Yes.
And I am, wait a minute, let's get out of there. Hang on. I am going to show you what is marked as States Exhibit 164. I'm going to ask to have it entered into evidence, admitted into evidence, and permission to publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, so 164 is admitted and you may publish.
So Ms. Mitchell, you're present every time they're rolling camera, is that right, on Rust?
With the exception of sometimes, just a couple of times.
Hang on, let me ask you this. Do you recall meeting with me and me showing you a video that I wanted you to talk about? That was from October 17th. Do you recall that?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Could you refresh my memory, please?
I will refresh your memory. We're gonna have to unplug because I'm gonna have to refresh.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all right.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. Do you recall? You know what I'm talking about now?
I do.
Okay. Okay. I think we can turn the monitors back on. Let's go ahead. Were you present for the filming of that take?
Yes, I was.
All right. I'm going to pull up States Exhibit 164 and publish.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you recall the date that this particular take was filmed?
She's using the notes.
I'm sorry. Hang on just a second.
That's
In order
what I
for
have
you
to
to
refer to.
in order for you to refer to your notes, we need you to have a discussion with us.
Okay.
So as you sit here today, do you recall the date that this was filmed?
I don't recall the date, but it's in my script.
Okay, would it refresh your memory if you looked at your notes?
Yes,
Okay, so what I want you to do, listen to me carefully.
I am.
I want you to look at your notes And then I just want you to keep that information to yourself.
Wait a second, don't open your notes.
Okay.
They get to approach you and see what you're looking at.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna have this, when you look in your notes, just take note of the date and then wait for a follow-up question, okay?
Okay.
Does council wish to approach to see what she's looking at?
I don't need to see her notes. Do you want to see her notes?
I'd like to see it.
Sure.
You said it's a script.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I open it up? Okay. All right. You can come around here if you want.
Okay. It's okay if you.
No, it's not. This is. No, it's not. Yeah.
Ms. Mitchell, go ahead and take your time and see if you can find that. I apologize.
Well, I don't want to get into why this is confusing, but I think a gremlin came in and took the page because I can't find it.
Hang on just a second.
I might have moved it. Should be October 20th. It's October 20th.
No,
No?
stop for a second. I told you to wait for a follow-up question.
Sorry.
Don't just speak, okay?
Okay,
Wait with us.
okay. Here it is. I found it.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, that's a memory refresh.
Okay, has your memory been refreshed as to the date?
Yes.
And let me just ask you, and you can close, take note of the date, okay? And is there something that's on the screen that helps you refer to your notes?
10/17.
No, go ahead and answer my question.
Yes.
What's on the screen that helps you refer, that helps you find that in your notes?
125 Charlie, the scene number.
Okay, so the 125C is the scene number. Is that what you said?
That's the slate number. The scene is 125. This is the slate number.
Okay. And so are you able to compare your notes to the information on that slate?
Yes.
And were you present for the filming of this take?
I was.
And what was the date that this was filmed on?
October 17th,
All right.
2021.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and publish it now.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark. We got to do the footprints again. So we're here. Is camera left? No, that's it. I'm sorry?
It's my understanding that part of your job is continuity. Is that right?
Correct.
So I'm going to ask you, can you identify this prop that we're looking at right here on Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
What is that prop?
It's his over-the-shoulder holster
And
bandolier thing.
his holster or bandolier, you said?
Mhm.
And what are these things that are right here?
Bullets.
And is that the way that the bandolier was loaded on October 17th?
Correct.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Ms. Mitchell, I'm going to take you to the date of October 21st, 2021. Were you working on set that day?
Yes,
We understand that there was some filming in the morning, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Do you recall taking a lunch break that day?
I do.
And, well, let me back up. We've heard a lot of testimony that the camera crew walked off that day.
Yes.
And did you have a discussion with Mr. Souza and Ms. Hutchins about making the day?
I did.
Okay, without saying what they said, can you just tell us what you said to them in terms of that conversation?
I said, I turned to Halyna and I said, I shoot with one camera all my career until shooting with two cameras became the thing. I said, and then I looked at Joel and I said, if we're organized and you have a plan, we can make the day with one camera. And Halyna said, I shoot with the one camera too all the time.
Okay, but provided only for context. So we understand that there was some filming and then you went to lunch. I want you to start after lunch, where it's our understanding that there's something going on in the church preparing for a scene. If you can describe that to us, please. Do you recall, let me ask you this, when you went into the church after lunch, were other people already there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
After lunch.
after lunch, we're only going to talk about after lunch.
Okay. Yes.
So when you were in the church after lunch, who do you recall being in the church?
Doran Curtin,
And Ms. Curtin, what was her role on set?
wardrobe.
Okay. Keep going, please.
She had blood. She was going to refresh blood.
Fake blood, I assume.
Fake blood.
Okay.
I switched places with her because she's real tall. And I said, could I stand in front of you? And we laughed and I went in front of her. Halyna, Serge, my director, Ross, Zach, Alec Baldwin in the pew with the gun, Karen Kuhn.
Who's Karen Kuhn?
She's a still photographer.
Thank you.
And she was on the side.
Okay, thank you.
Coming into the church, I think there was a special effects guy there, maybe the supervisor.
Okay. Let me ask you this. When you came into the church, did Mr. Baldwin already have his gun?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay, so you didn't see how he got the gun or who handed him the gun?
I did not.
Okay, so you come into the church.
Dave Hall was there also.
Okay, Mr. Halls was there.
Sorry.
How long before the gun goes off are you in the church?
Not very long at all.
Okay, so when you come into the church, you've indicated these people were there. What was happening in the moments before the gun went off?
I switched place with Doran. Halyna was here and she's doing her thing with the light, looking at him. She's doing her lighting. And people are not static on a film set. So it's a dance. And she's doing this and looking at there was an onboard monitor and Joel is looking and they're there and she's doing her thing and looking at him and that. And I don't know what everybody else was doing, but that's what they were doing. Because
Okay.
I saw the camera, I had an idea of what shot it was, one of three. I hadn't seen the lens yet, so I wasn't sure what it was yet. And that's what they were doing.
And then what happened?
And then I took my phone out.
It's okay.
I took my phone
yeah.
out. Oh, the actor was practicing on his own.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yeah, he was practicing. And as I was doing, he was practicing. And then when I looked down to my phone got the picture. I was going to check his wardrobe, make sure everything matched.
And let me stop you. As a part of your continuity job, do you frequently take photos and videos on your phone?
I frequently take photos.
Okay.
Sometimes it flips. I take photos.
Okay. When you said sometimes it flips, on occasion, do you end up with a live photo or a short video?
Yes.
Okay. So you're using your phone for continuity.
Constantly.
Okay. What happens then?
So I got my picture and I was going to check his wardrobe. And right when I was doing that explosion.
And when that happens, what do you do?
My body had it was a shock. And then I heard guttural moaning, and I looked around and my director was crab crawling backwards. And then I turned around to look at Alec. And when I did, she was falling in my direction and I ran.
And when you say she was falling, you mean
Halyna Hutchins was falling and I ran.
And why did you run?
To get help
And so,
and away from danger.
okay. Where did you go?
I ran out the door, down the steps to the left, towards one of the set. It was a set deck truck, one of the trucks, and with my phone, and I start dialing 911.
And are you the person that called 911 in this case?
I am.
And when you spoke to 911, how did you describe the incident that you were calling them for? Ms. Mitchell?
I believe I said we've had 2 people shot accidentally on a film set. We need help immediately.
And why did you use the word accidentally?
I did not want her to think there was an active shooter or a mass shooting. I needed and gather an army together. I wanted to come right away.
Okay.
Help right away.
And you thought that if law enforcement or medics thought that it was an active shooter, it may take them more time. Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay. And ma'am, have you also filed a civil lawsuit against the production company and other folks in this case?
I have.
Are you testifying today because you think it's going to help your civil lawsuit?
No, it's not going to help my civil lawsuit at all.
Are you testifying truthfully today?
I am.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass the witness.
Ma'am, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. I just have a few questions for you, not too much. First of all, I want to go back to your movies with the other armors. You said there was about 24 of them, give or take. Okay. On those, did you ever have a situation where there was a part-time armor, to your knowledge, somebody that did part-time armory and part-time something else?
I think there might have been 1 or 2.
Were those day people, or was that part-time? Well, what's that term you used earlier, day? When they just come in for a day and then they're gone?
A day player?
Day player. Were those day players or was that a part-time armor?
Do you mean, was it a prop master who also does armory?
Yes, yes, even a day player. They did both.
I don't remember. It's
Okay.
a day player.
Okay. Now, with regard to seeing the cart you mentioned, do you know whether when you saw the cart sometimes whether those firearms on there were real or whether they were replica firearms?
Not to my knowledge. I think everything was a real firearm.
Okay. Are you not aware whether there were any replica firearms, any fake type firearms on Rust?
No.
Okay. Now, also, you were aware that the armor would be called to scenes sometimes, right? That she'd have to be on a scene when they were filming?
I don't know what you mean by on a scene.
Okay, in or around it, when firearms are being used, she had to be in or around that scene?
All armors have to be present when a firearm is being used.
Okay, and that wasn't my question. My question was, did you know on this movie set that the armor sometimes had to be in or near the scene when firearms were being used?
Yes.
Okay. So on those times, it would be impossible for the armorer to be at her cart too, right?
Well, I've never heard of that before.
Well, kind of hard to be in two places at one time, isn't it? That's kind of the point. Now, did you know whether this cart was shared with props and armory men?
I think it was.
So when you saw the messy, you described it, your kitchen drawer where you put everything. Do you know if the props people were coming and putting their stuff on it too?
I think they were.
Okay. And so do you know who might have caused the, things to be in different places? Was it props or you don't know who was doing that? Do you?
I do.
Who?
They were all doing it.
Okay. So did you see him?
Yes.
You saw Sarah Zachary putting stuff on it? Yeah.
3 women at a cart. Sometimes.
Okay. Now, with regard to the discharge that you said you heard, you remember that?
Which one?
Well, you described when you were walking, I think you said you heard a sound, a shot. Is that right?
A misfire.
Yes. Okay.
2 of them.
Okay. Did you find out about that well after? Or were you actually there?
I was there. It almost blew my ears out.
Okay. Now, do you know whether any of that was special effects?
It was not special effects.
Okay. Did you report that to anybody?
Everyone, I didn't have to report it. Everybody knew it.
Okay. Everybody in production?
I don't know about production. Everyone on the set heard it.
Okay. Do you know if Dave Halls heard it?
Dave Halls was there.
Okay. So he would have known, so you wouldn't have had to tell him, right?
Everyone who was at that set, on that set, and there were a lot of people, heard the gun go off accidentally, twice.
Okay. Different topic. In the script, do you remember whether it required a draw in the scene on October 21st, 2021, after lunch? Did that scene require a draw from the holster? For the actor, for Mr. Baldwin to draw from his holster?
It did.
Okay. Do you remember if that required him to point the weapon?
That's not the shot that we discussed before lunch.
Okay. So was that in the script or not?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I have nothing further to add.
I don't have any additional
Okay.
questions. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. You're
Thank you very
excused.
much. Thank you.
You too. All right, we're going to break for the week. So, just because we did a whole week, all right, I don't want to confuse anybody. We're going to break for the day, okay? All right, so please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Do not do any research, do not Google about the case or the trial, the Rust production, anything, okay? The evidence is one of the jurors must be reassured that we're not going past the 8th. I can't give that reassurance, okay?
Can we approach on
Yeah,
that though?
sure.
It might be helpful.
I'm afraid I dozed off there. um, let's see. That was the longest sidebar on record, or I was out longer than I thought. Okay, let's take a look. How long was that sidebar? Oh, I missed an entire witness. Oh dear. Okay, as soon as we find out.
Is that correct? Okay. You don't have to, nobody has to nod their head on which one of you wants to know. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so not past, whether it's gonna go past the 8th, they think that they will finish their case the day before that.
And that would be finishing both cases.
Yes. Assuming everything goes at the right clip. But then, so,
Judge, just a point of clarification. What we discussed is that we expect, hopefully, to be doing closing arguments the morning of the 7th.
okay, but that doesn't mean your deliberations are not going to go past the 8th. All right? Because once it's handed to you, it's however long you all deliberate. Okay? So I would say, in an abundance of caution, that it will go past the 8th as far as deliberations go. That's in an abundance of caution. Okay? Just knowing jurors have to get situated after they get the evidence, and then, it just depends. Okay? Am I making myself clear? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. We're in recess.
All rise.
Okay, so that's it. We wrapped up early and we are done for we are expecting a big snowstorm here, courtesy of California. Something's not muted. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. Hope everybody has a great weekend. And sorry about dozing off. Yeah. Bye-bye.